Lords of the Fallen just launched, and with it we have a whole bunch of things to dive into. If you're just jumping into the game for the first time, you're going through the character creation process, you're probably a little confused on how the stats work and how they actually allocate or benefit your character, because the game does not have any kind of built-in tooltips to give you that information. In this video today, we're going to go through all of the 6 stats, and I'm going to break down what stats do as far as what certain attributes they give you, what defensive stats, resistances, and what have you. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things here is by upfronting the knowledge of my videos so you can stick around to see if it's the right one for you. So with that being said, let me just kind of give you the quick breakdown of everything. Strength, every 1 point is going to give you physical defensive stat, and it's going to give you 1 defensive stat point. Every 2 points, or pretty much every even number, it's going to give you 1 resistance. And then obviously strength, agility, all those stats, they're going to give you damage bonuses that correspond with your specific weapon scaling. So if your weapon does physical damage and it scales with strength or agility, you're going to get a benefit from that. But if it scales with fire, maybe you need Inferno. Holy probably needs Radiance. Wither, same thing. So keep those things in mind when we talk about these stats, because those aren't going to be factored into them, of course. Moving on though, agility, every 2 points is going to give you 1 point of resistance, and every 1 point is going to give you 1 point of defensive stats. Endurance, every point is going to give you roughly 17 or 18 stamina. It just depends on where you're at in your overall endurance investment. Every vitality point is going to give you 21 health, and it's going to give you +2 to your weight, and then it will eventually scale down to doing +1 to your weight. It will also give you +1 defensive stat, and then +1 resistance every other level. For Radiance and Inferno, both of them are going to give you 9 or 8 stamina. It alternates. It goes +9, +8, +9, +8. Same way that Endurance works. It goes +17, +18. It alternates back and forth. But Radiance is going to give you 1 resistance every other level, and it's going to give you +3 to Holy and Wither resistance, as well as 1 defensive stat every level. And Inferno is going to give you +3 fire defensive stat, and then 1 defensive stat every other level, and then it's going to give you 1 resistance every other level. So that's the down and dirty for this entire video. If that's all you wanted to know, then please feel free to shut the video down. But before you do, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. I currently have 89% unsubscribed viewer base, so I'm trying to change that number here by the end of the year. You can jump ahead to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters about the timeline and the description, and don't forget to check me out on Twitch, where I will be streaming Lords of the Fallen as well as tons of other things. But let's get started here on my beginner's guide to the stats in Lords of the Fallen. The first stat we're going to jump into here is strength. So strength, every point that we invest into this, you can see on the right side of the screen, it's going to give us +3 to our defensive stat of physical, but it's also going to give us +1 to fire, holy, and wither. And then every point after that is just going to alternate. Every other point after that is going to give us 1 point into our resistances. So take, for example, we start with 12 strength. We have 281 smite. If I go up to an uneven number, or an odd number as they're often called, you can see that I still have 281 smite. But I go to another even. So we put 2 points deep. Now smite is 282. And every other one of our resistances goes up by 1 every other point. So you can see how those kind of work. Now, of course, keep in mind your attack power is going to scale with your item. Now, if this is your first time playing any one of these games, what that means is when you take a look at, let's jump out of here. We're going to go into my item. At the very center portion of the screen, right? I'll use the power of a mouse. You can see that this has strength and agility D- and C-. So this means that this weapon scales less with strength, but it does scale with strength, and it scales more with agility. So these numbers, these letters correspond to how much damage you'll be getting out of that item. So again, higher agility is going to give me more overall increase to my damage here. But that is important when it comes to taking a look at your strength stat, because your strength stat is maybe dependent upon the weapon choices you have. This is not going to increase your weight or make it easier for you to wear heavy armor like you might think with the word strength. So keep that in mind when you're investing in it. Now for agility, this is going to help out with all of your agility scaling weapons, of course, but you're going to see that this is going to help you out by increasing your resistances and your defensive stats, just like strength did. Now, strength gave us a resistance every other point, right? Well, agility does the same thing. Every other point we invest into agility, we are getting a resistance bonus. As far as our defensive stats, though, our defensive stats are going up by 1 with every point of agility you can see here. And just as I kind of pump this up. And we were talked a little bit too about that weapon scaling on strength and how it was a lower one than agility in this example. Well, you can take a look at my physical damage. The physical damage base on this weapon is 88. It's +7 because of the scaling I get from both my strength and my agility. Let's put a point here into agility. Now it goes up to +8. Let's put another point. Now it's 9. Put another point, now it's +11. And that's with only 3 points of investment. Conversely, let me show you what the difference is if I look at strength. We're going to put 3 points deep into this. 1, 2, 3. So it only gives me +9. So you can see the difference here as far as how that scaling kind of embodies itself in the damage bonuses that you're going to get based off of the weapon type that you've decided to use in Lords of the Fallen. Our third stat is endurance. And this one, for every point we do, it's going to help us out with weight. Now, I'm sure that all of these stats scale, and I'm sure that Fightin' Cowboy has an amazing video on this because that guy is like a virtuoso of all of these types of games. But endurance starts its scaling very quickly in the game. And what I mean by that is, for every point you invest, you get less. It's kind of a point of diminishing returns. So if I put 1 point into endurance here, you're going to see a lot of things happen. My stamina is going to go up by 18 points. My weight is going to go up by 2 points, but my defensive stats are going to go up all by 1 point each, and my resistances are going to stay as is. Let's invest another point. Okay, now our stamina went up 17 points, and you can see the difference between our endurance is 76 to 77. It only went up 1 point, and our defensive stats went up 1 point, and now our resistances went up 1 point. So, to conclude, we get alternating 17 and 18 stamina with every point of endurance. So it goes 18, 17, 18, 17, 18, 17. Our weight will scale. So now I'm just going to put more points into this. 77 to 79. So now that goes up to 2. Back down to 1. Another 1. Another 1. So you can see that this will alternate between 2 and 1 depending on your total endurance investment. And I'm sure that I'm going to get another 2 points in my next level, and it'll probably drop down to +1 for 4 levels, and then another +2 after that. So it seems that it has some sort of scaling effect in that regard. And then again, too, as far as our defensive stats go, they're going up by 1 with every level, and then our resistances are going up on every even or every other level. Vitality is one of those stats that pretty much everyone is going to invest in because it gives us our health. It's going to be useful for your quality builds, your strength builds, your magic builds, decks, everything. So when we invest 1 point into it, we're going to see that we're going to get 21 health. But we also get weight from this. So endurance and vitality will both increase our weight. That's probably something I missed in the intro. I apologize about that. But our weight scales at a different rate in vitality than it did in endurance. So take a look. We go from 74, take a look at this photograph, to 76, to 77, to 79, to 80. And that's with 4 points invested. Let's look at our endurance. And albeit too, take a look, my endurance is 12 versus 14. So those things are kind of worth taking a look at. So let's put 4 points into endurance. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we're at 2 points less than vitality, and we have the same amount of weight allowance. So you can see that the scaling is different on endurance, where it goes 74, 2, then it's going to go up by 1, then 2, then 1. There we go. I went beyond it at one point. So it just kind of has a different scaling mechanic than vitality. So keep that in mind. And that also might be linked to the weight number itself that scales. I haven't been able to do enough testing, but I wanted to at least show what a lot of these stats do. So when you're going through your character building process, you at least have some guidance, because I didn't. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? So as far as other things we get with vitality is an increase to our defensive stats yet again, and an increase to our resistances every other level. So you can see that pretty much every single stat gives you a bonus to your resistance every other level, which is good because you'll need that in this game. Now let's go ahead and go to our last two in Radiance and Inferno. So these are going to be your two spellcasting stats, and they're going to operate very similarly. Radiance here, when I put 1 point into it, you're going to see that it's going to give us 9 mana. If I put another point though, it's going to give us 8 mana. And that's going to keep switching off back and forth between 9 and 8, 9 and 8, 9 and 8 ad infinitum. So at 9 Radiance though, you can see that we get 1 point in physical, 1 point in fire, 3 points in both holy and wither. Radiance is the only way to jack up your wither faster than everything else. Everything else just does it at 1 point, if it does it at all. And again, the same thing can be said here for holy. Now, as far as our resistances go, you guessed it, it's going to have a every other point scaling situation going on. So every other point we put into this is going to give us 1 point in all of our resistances. Now our last stat is going to be for Inferno. And it's worth noting too that both of these stats with Radiance and Inferno are going to affect your fire or holy damage spells and so on and so forth. Any kind of weapons that are going to be enchanted with that are probably going to scale off of Radiance, and I'm saying that from conjecture. I have not encountered a item that is imbued with that as like a additional damage profile. I would just assume that it is. But if you're sticking with the Pyromancer class or the kind of like holy cleric type class, or even just the base class, the Hallowed Knight and the Dark Crusader all start with Radiance scaling. They have 1 point into Radiance for the Hallowed Knight, and I believe the Dark Crusader has Radiance of 11. So both of them have some Radiance starting off. So Inferno though is very similar to Radiance. They both have the same mana scaling of 9 and 8 alternating, and they both have the same resistances every other level. But the big difference here is going to be the way the defensive stats scale. It's +1 for everything except for fire, as you would have assumed. You don't get any wither benefits going into Inferno. So as you can see here, just putting 1 point in goes to 337 physical, 316 from 313 fire, 314 holy, and 310 wither. But this is how all of your stats work in Lords of the Fallen. And one final note before we close our video out too, is that Inferno and Radiance also increases kind of your knowledge, I guess I'll say, of certain items within the game. And this is going to apply to pretty much everything. You can see that some of these will say increase your Inferno and Radiance to gain further insight. Even just general armor, increase your Inferno to gain further insight, giving you kind of an idea of what this kind of errs on the side of. And Inferno and Radiance seem to be kind of like a balancing act within this game, where you have to essentially choose if you're going to invest into either one of those points. And a lot of things also do scale with Radiance and Inferno. So while that is outside of the purview of what each individual stat does, I did want to bring up Radiance and Inferno as two things that are very important to progression points in the game, related to certain items and certain things, as it seems you will kind of always need to choose one way or another as you progress. And that's again a bit of conjecture. I'm not far enough into this game to have a concrete knowledge of that, but it also is worth noting too that you can reset your build. So if you want, you can actually recycle this. You're like, you know what, I invested everything poorly. You can reset it, so don't feel like you're locked into anything. And at that, it brings our video here to a close. So if you have any questions about these stats and how to allocate them, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. The game just came out, so there's plenty of things to learn about it. There's plenty of things to dive into. It's a game that is very similar to Dark Souls, but you basically kind of have a little bit of a light platforming, puzzling mechanic, very similar to a game like Soul Reaper. And I'm very excited to show this off and play more on my Twitch, so go ahead and check me out on Twitch to watch me stumble through more of this game. But also be on the lookout for a performance guide on the game to get a little bit more performance out of it, as well as a guide on selecting your character class. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.